Everything you want is already yours. But here's the catch. As long as you keep waiting for it, you're pushing it further away. The question is, are you bold enough to stop waiting and start living as if it's already real? What if I told you the biggest reason your desire hasn't shown up isn't lack of faith, bad luck, or even timing, but the simple fact that you're still waiting? Sounds harsh, but think about it. Every time you say, "I'll feel better once it happens," you're postponing your blessing. And that postponement is the invisible chain holding everything back. Neville Goddard flipped the script on this game of waiting. He revealed a truth most people never hear in their lifetime. You don't manifest by hoping, begging, or waiting. You manifest by living as if it's already done. Not someday, not when the signs appear, now. But here's the paradox. Most people confuse acting as if with truly embodying the state. One feels fake, forced, like playing dress-up. The other is effortless, natural, magnetic, and it changes everything. The difference between the two can mean years of waiting, or results that feel almost miraculous. So let me ask you, are you truly living in the end, embodying the wish fulfilled, or are you secretly waiting for proof before you dare to believe? Because in the next few minutes, you'll see why that single decision is the turning point between lack and fulfillment. There's a question that has the power to stop someone in their tracks, a question so simple, yet so revealing, that once asked honestly, it can't be ignored. Are you living as if your desire is already real, or are you still waiting for proof? That's it. No complicated philosophy, no endless techniques, just that piercing inquiry. And in the silence that follows, the truth always surfaces. Most people, when they hear this question, immediately feel a slight discomfort. They realize they've been waiting, postponing, or bargaining with life. They might say, "I'm trying to believe, but," or "I'll be happy once it happens." Yet that very language exposes the hidden state they're in, lack. And lack, when nurtured, only multiplies itself. Growing up, maybe you heard phrases like, "One day things will get better," or "We just have to wait for our blessing." It sounds hopeful, but in reality it teaches the mind to delay life. It programs us to believe that fulfillment is always in the future, never now. The subconscious learns this script and keeps replaying it endlessly. Imagine someone who desires wealth but keeps checking their bank account every morning with dread. Their heart races, their stomach tightens, and yet they whisper affirmations on top of that fear. The question cuts through all that noise. Are you living in the end, or are you waiting for the numbers to change first? That contrast is the mirror. It's like planting a seed and then digging it up every day to check if it's growing. Anyone would laugh at that. Yet when it comes to money, love, or health, people live exactly this way. They hope, but secretly they're doubting, testing, and waiting. The question doesn't allow hiding. It shows whether you're embodying the wish fulfilled or sabotaging it. There's a friend of mine who once admitted, "I keep visualizing my dream job, but deep down I'm waiting for the email to arrive before I relax." And that's it. That subtle waiting is the invisible barrier. It's not about the email. It's about the state. Because if you're waiting, you're not assuming, and if you're not assuming, you're repeating the old story. Think about this. A child doesn't wait to become a pirate when they're playing. The moment they put on the eye patch, they are the pirate. They stomp, they command, they live the role with full conviction. No hesitation, no waiting. That's embodiment. The question when faced asks, do you have that same childlike certainty, or are you still cautiously waiting for permission? Here's where it gets raw. Waiting feels safer. It feels rational. Society says, don't count your chickens before they hatch. But Neville Goddard would flip that script completely. If you don't live in the end, the chickens never hatch. The very act of waiting whispers to the subconscious, it's not here yet. And life obediently echoes back, not yet. So let's revisit the question one more time, slower. Are you living as if your desire is already real, breathing from that place, walking from that place? Or are you simply waiting, hoping, bargaining? When the truth hits, it can sting, but that sting is liberation, because once you see the pattern, you can finally shift it. And here's the bridge. If waiting cancels assumption, then what's the alternative? Neville's answer is clear. Stop delaying and live in the end. Not tomorrow, not after proof, but now. This opens the door to the next revelation, understanding what Neville really meant when he spoke about the end. Neville Goddard didn't complicate things. He made them radically simple. His teaching about manifestation could be summed up in one line: live in the end. It sounds almost too straightforward, but that's where the power lies. To him, the end wasn't a future event. It was a state of consciousness, a place you dwell in right now. The future is born in the present. Living in the end means embodying the wish fulfilled. Not trying, not pretending, but actually inhabiting the version of yourself who already has what they desire. If it's financial abundance, you feel the security of it. If it's love, you feel cherished. It's not about looking for it outside, it's about being it inside. The shift is internal before it's external. Think of it like moving into a new house. On the first night, it might still feel strange. Boxes everywhere, new walls, new sounds. But over time, it becomes your home. Living in the end is the same. At first, it may feel like a mental exercise, but the more you dwell in it, the more natural it becomes. Before long, it feels like you. Neville used to say imagination creates reality, but he didn't mean imagination as daydreaming or idle fantasy. He meant conscious, intentional dwelling in the state of the end. That's why he insisted that your inner conversations, your secret assumptions, and even your smallest reactions reveal whether you're living in the end or clinging to the old state. Many people here live in the end and think it means acting delusional, walking around pretending something is true when it's not. But Neville never spoke of pretending. He spoke of embodying. Pretending says, this isn't real, but I'll play along. Embodying says, this is real now because I decide it. One drains you, the other transforms you. A good analogy is putting on clothes that fit your future self. At first, they may feel a little too big, a little uncomfortable, but as you wear them, they shape you. Soon, they're not future clothes. They're just your clothes. That's what living in the end feels like. You grow into it until it feels completely natural. Here's the tricky part. The senses will argue with you. The bank account might still show the same numbers. The bed might still feel empty. The body might still feel weak. But Neville taught that the outer is just a shadow of the inner. If you wait for the shadow to change before changing the substance, you'll be waiting forever. Living in the end means choosing the inner reality over the outer evidence. It's radical, almost rebellious. It's like saying, I know what my senses show, but I choose to dwell in the unseen because I know the unseen gives birth to the seen. That is faith, not blind hope, but inner certainty. And certainty bends reality. Neville often used scripture to ground his teaching. He'd point to verses like, call those things which be not as though they were. That's living in the end. It's not waiting until the promise is visible. It's walking as if it's already done. And in that walk, the world rearranges itself. Life conforms to the state you occupy. So when someone asks, how do I apply Neville's method? The answer isn't a ritual, a chant, or even endless visualization. It's this: dwell in the end until it feels like home. Let the wish fulfilled be your natural atmosphere. And from there, the next step becomes clear, understanding the subtle difference between acting and truly embodying. This is where many people get confused. They hear act as if, and immediately think it means putting on a performance, like playing a role in a theater. But acting in this sense often feels hollow. Deep down, you know you're faking it. And when the subconscious senses pretense, it doesn't buy into it. It keeps reflecting the old reality back to you. Embodying, on the other hand, is entirely different. Embodying isn't about playing pretend. It's about accepting a new identity so naturally that it becomes second nature. It's the quiet conviction that says, this is who I am now. There's no effort to convince anyone, not even yourself. It's simply your state of being. Think about someone who's just learned to ride a bike. At first, they act like they can balance, wobbling and trying to hold it together. But once the skill clicks, they no longer act, they embody the balance. That's the difference. Acting requires effort, while embodiment flows effortlessly once the state is assumed. Neville Goddard warned about the danger of treating the law of assumption like a performance. If you act abundance, while secretly fearing scarcity, you're only layering pretense over lack. The subconscious doesn't respond to surface acting, it responds to feeling. Feeling is the secret because it bypasses the mind's performance and goes straight to conviction. Here's an everyday example. Imagine someone constantly posting on social media about how happy and wealthy they are, but behind closed doors, they're filled with anxiety. That's acting. Embodying is different. It doesn't need validation or performance. Embodying feels secure even in silence because it's not for show, it's a state, not a mask. You know you're embodying when you don't need external applause. When you wake up in the morning, and even before checking your phone or your bank account, you carry a quiet confidence. This is who I am now. That calm assurance seeps into how you speak, how you walk, how you even drink your morning coffee. No theater, just reality. Acting often drains energy. It's like holding up a mask, worried that it might slip. Embodying, however, energizes you. It gives a sense of rest, because you're no longer trying to maintain an image, you're simply living from the end. And from this place, the Neville manifestation technique works seamlessly because there's no resistance. Let's use another analogy. Imagine wearing a costume at a party. You're constantly aware it's not you, adjusting it, making sure others play along. That's acting. Now imagine wearing clothes that fit you perfectly. You don't think about them, you just move. That's embodying. One requires effort, the other flows effortlessly. People sometimes ask, but how do I know if I'm acting or embodying? The answer is simple. Check how you feel when no one's watching. If you need the world's confirmation, you're acting. If you feel fulfilled even in silence, you're embodying. The law of assumption always responds to embodiment, never to performance. And here's the beauty. Once you see the difference, you'll notice how waiting sneaks back in through the cracks. Acting often hides waiting, while embodying cancels it completely, which leads us straight to the next realization. Why waiting is the very thing that cancels assumption in the first place. Waiting seems harmless, even logical. After all, isn't patience a virtue? But when it comes to Neville Goddard's law of assumption, waiting is poison. Why? Because waiting declares, it's not here yet. And the subconscious takes that declaration as law, reflecting it endlessly in your reality. Waiting keeps the desire always tomorrow, never today. Imagine someone saying, I'll feel abundant once I get the raise. They don't realize that very statement plants the seed of lack. They're not embodying the wish fulfilled, they're postponing it. And life mirrors that postponement perfectly. The raise stays out of reach because the inner reality hasn't shifted into abundance. It's still dwelling in waiting. Waiting is subtle. It doesn't always look like sitting on the couch doing nothing. It can sound like endless affirmations, checking for results, or obsessively looking for signs. But beneath it all is the same vibration. It hasn't happened yet. And as Neville taught, imagination creates reality. So what reality gets created? More waiting. Have you ever tracked a package online? Refreshing the page every 5 minutes doesn't make it arrive faster. It just keeps you in a state of impatience. Waiting for manifestation works the same way. The constant checking is proof that you don't believe it's already yours. And if you don't believe it's yours, life agrees with you. Waiting whispers doubt. It's like a background noise in the mind, constantly asking, when will it happen? Why isn't it here yet? That question itself is the evidence you're not living in the end. Neville would say, you're not embodying, you're rehearsing lack. The very effort to wait keeps the wish at arm's length. Here's a story. A man once told me he visualized winning the lottery every night. But by day he kept telling his friends, when I finally win, my life will start. That sentence revealed the truth. He wasn't embodying wealth, he was rehearsing the absence of it. Waiting cancels assumption because it keeps declaring, not yet. The irony is that waiting feels like faith. People say, I'm waiting on God's timing, or good things come to those who wait. But Neville Goddard turned that upside down. He taught that God is your imagination, and imagination only works in the present. Waiting places God outside of you, in some distant future, where he cannot move. Think about relationships. If someone says, I'll love you once you prove yourself, does that feel like love? Of course not. Real love is given now, without conditions. Manifestation works the same way. If you're waiting for proof before you feel fulfilled, you're withholding the very state that creates proof. It's conditional faith. And here's the hardest pill to swallow. Waiting is addictive. It feels safe because it doesn't demand change now. You get to postpone responsibility to say someday, but while someday feels comforting, it's also a trap. Neville would remind us, the only power is now. Waiting dilutes that power into nothingness. So the truth is clear. Waiting and assumption can't live in the same house. One says not yet, the other says already done. And the subconscious, ever faithful, will always reflect whichever state you occupy. Which is why Neville pointed us back to the real bridge that makes it possible. Feeling is the secret. Neville Goddard's most famous phrase still echoes across decades. Feeling is the secret. Why? Because feeling is the bridge between the invisible and the visible, the imagined and the experienced. Thoughts alone can remain abstract, but when they're soaked in emotion, they become alive. Feeling makes the wish fulfilled tangible in consciousness. Imagine someone repeating affirmations like a robot. I am rich, I am rich, I am rich. Without feeling, those words are empty shells. But the moment they infuse the affirmation with the warmth of security, the sigh of relief, the joy of freedom, the words transform. They're no longer just sounds, they become states, and states create reality. Neville taught that the subconscious doesn't respond to words, it responds to the mood behind them. Think about it. You don't remember every word from your childhood, but you remember how certain moments made you feel. That's the language of the subconscious. And that's why embodying the wish fulfilled means dwelling in the feeling of already having it. A good analogy is music. You can read the lyrics of a song, but until you hear the melody, it doesn't move you. Feeling is the melody of manifestation. It gives depth and dimension to the words, turning them into something the subconscious can recognize and respond to. Without melody, the song is flat. Without feeling, the assumption is empty. Let's make it practical. If someone desires love, instead of saying I am loved without emotion, they can close their eyes and recall a time when they felt deeply cherished. Maybe a hug from their mother or a friend who showed up at just the right moment. That warmth becomes the seed. Feeling it bridges the desire into assumption. Think about gratitude. True gratitude isn't just saying thank you. It's a felt appreciation that softens the body and opens the heart. When applied to manifestation, gratitude, as if the wish fulfilled is already here, anchors the state. It's not wishful thinking, it's emotional reality. Gratitude collapses the distance between desire and fulfillment. Neville often compared feeling to the womb of creation. The imaginal act is the seed, but feeling is the fertile soil where that seed takes root. Without feeling, the seed dries up. With feeling, it flourishes. That's why he insisted, don't just imagine, feel yourself into the scene. That's the true Neville manifestation technique. Here's a personal story. A woman once told me she imagined driving her dream car, but it wasn't working. When I asked if she could feel the steering wheel, the leather, the freedom of the wind through the window, she paused and realized she had only been thinking it, not feeling it. Once she added feeling, everything shifted. Feeling is also the bridge because it bypasses logic. The mind might argue, but the money isn't here yet. Yet when you feel secure, the subconscious doesn't argue. It accepts, and once it accepts, reality reshapes itself to match that feeling. That's why Neville said imagination creates reality. It's not logic that manifests, but feeling. So if waiting cancels assumption, feeling fulfills it. Feeling is the glue, the proof, the bridge that allows the inner to become the outer. The more you dwell in the state of fulfillment through feeling, the more natural it becomes. And soon even your smallest daily choices begin to reveal which state you're truly inhabiting. It's easy to think manifestation is all about big, dramatic shifts. But Neville Goddard would remind us, the state you occupy shows itself in the tiniest choices. The way you speak to yourself, the way you walk into a room, even the tone you use when talking about money, all of these reveal whether you're living in the end or waiting in lack. Take language, for instance. Someone might say, I can't afford that, without even realizing the state behind it. Another person in the same situation might say, that's not a priority for me right now. Both sentences describe the same circumstance, but one carries lack while the other carries sovereignty. Subtle, yes, but the subconscious notices. How you respond to setbacks is another clue. Do you collapse into fear and say, nothing ever works out for me? Or do you calmly say, even this is moving me closer to the end I've already assumed? One response feeds the state of waiting, the other affirms embodiment. Daily choices are like breadcrumbs pointing to the state you're really in. Body language speaks too. A person living in scarcity often slouches, moves hurriedly, or avoids eye contact. Someone embodying abundance stands differently. They move with quiet confidence, not arrogance, but a calm assurance that life is already on their side. The body doesn't lie. It's a living testimony of the state you occupy. Think about morning routines. Do you wake up rushing, scrolling your phone for bad news or stressing over bills? Or do you take even a few minutes to center yourself in the state of the wish fulfilled? These little rituals may seem insignificant, but they accumulate. They reveal whether you're rehearsing lack or rehearsing fulfillment. Neville manifestation technique isn't just about closing your eyes at night. It's about carrying that state into the grocery store, into the office, into conversations with friends. The wish-fulfilled version of you isn't locked in a meditation chair. It's expressed in daily choices. Reality shifts when you consistently live that state. I once knew a man who wanted financial freedom. At first, he kept saying, "When I'm rich, I'll tip generously." But then he realized that state was always someday. So he started tipping small amounts with the feeling of generosity now. The amounts didn't matter. The state did. That tiny act became evidence of his assumption. Even leisure reveals your state. Someone waiting for life to change often escapes into distraction, numbing themselves with endless scrolling. But someone embodying the wish fulfilled invests time differently. Reading, creating, resting with purpose. Daily choices reveal the story you're telling yourself, whether consciously or not. Here's the beauty. You don't need to overhaul your entire life in a single day. Small choices compound. Each time you speak from fulfillment instead of lack, you strengthen the state. Each time you move with calm instead of fear, you anchor it deeper. Slowly, the subconscious shifts and the outer must follow. So yes, the grand imaginal acts matter, but it's these micro moments that really show the truth. Your small daily choices are constant evidence of whether you're embodying the end or postponing it. And when those choices align with fulfillment, you naturally flow into the next step, using imaginal rehearsal as the most powerful technique of all. Neville Goddard often said, "Don't just think about your desire, rehearse it." This is the essence of imaginal rehearsal, crafting a short, vivid scene that implies your wish fulfilled. Not a movie-length fantasy, not an endless daydream, just a single, condensed moment that carries the essence of your fulfillment. That moment becomes your inner proof. Think of it like a mental snapshot. For someone desiring success, it could be shaking hands with a friend who says, "Congratulations, I knew you'd make it." For someone longing for love, it could be feeling the warmth of a partner's hand at dinner. Small, simple, but emotionally charged. The subconscious doesn't need a novel, it needs a seed. Neville emphasized, step into the scene in first person. Don't watch yourself from the outside like a movie. Be in it. Hear the words spoken to you. Feel the textures. Sense the atmosphere. If you're being congratulated, feel the squeeze of the handshake, the vibration of joy in your chest. That detail makes the assumption real. The beauty of imaginal rehearsal is that it bypasses logic. Your senses may say, "But it's not here yet." Yet the subconscious doesn't care about logic. It cares about experience. When you rehearse the scene with feeling, the subconscious accepts it as truth, and once accepted, life conspires to mirror that inner truth. Athletes use this without even realizing they're applying the law of assumption. Before big games, they visualize the winning shot, the cheering crowd, the victory embrace. Their bodies then move as if they've already succeeded. Neville was teaching the same thing, but applied to every area of life. Love, health, abundance, purpose. Here's an example. A woman wanted to move into her dream home. Instead of stressing about mortgages, she rehearsed the feeling of turning the key in the door. She imagined the sound of it clicking, the smell of fresh paint, the joy of dropping her bag on the counter. Months later, the exact scene unfolded. The bridge was imaginal rehearsal. The key is repetition until it feels natural. At first, the scene may feel forced, even awkward, but as you replay it night after night, especially before sleep, the subconscious adopts it as memory, and memories shape identity. Soon the scene doesn't feel like practice anymore. It feels like reality previewing itself. One common mistake is trying to control the how. Neville warned against this. The imaginal scene is not about engineering the path, it's about anchoring the end. Your job isn't to figure out how the handshake happens, who makes the call, or which door opens. Your only job is to dwell in the feeling that it's already done. Another mistake is choosing a scene that's too grand or unrealistic to the mind. If it feels impossible, the subconscious rejects it. That's why Neville recommended short, simple scenes. The power isn't in complexity, it's in conviction. A 3-second imaginal act, done with feeling, can outweigh hours of forced visualization. And once you grasp this technique, you'll notice something remarkable. You stop waiting for proof. The rehearsal itself becomes the proof. You walk lighter, calmer, more assured. That assurance radiates outward and draws synchronicities. And soon, you'll see the signs that you're no longer acting, you're truly living as if. One of the biggest questions people ask is, how do I know if I'm actually living in the end? The answer isn't about what you're doing on the outside. It's about how you're being on the inside. There are unmistakable signs that reveal you've crossed the line from acting to embodying. And once you notice them, you'll never mistake the difference again. The first sign is inner calm. When you're embodying the wish fulfilled, urgency dissolves. You don't wake up asking, when will it happen? Because to you, it already has. That doesn't mean you stop desiring growth. It means the desperation is gone. You move with quiet certainty, as if the world is simply catching up to your state. Another sign is reduced obsession with how. When you're waiting, you stress over details. Who will call me? What door will open? How will it come? But when you live in the end, the how fades into the background. You know the law of assumption is working, so you stop micromanaging. Life feels lighter, freer, less tangled in control. Natural confidence is another hallmark. Not the loud, boastful kind, but the kind that shows in your posture, your voice, your choices. You might notice you speak differently about money, relationships, or opportunities. There's a tone of certainty. People around you sense it too. Even if they don't know why, they feel something has shifted. Synchronicities start showing up everywhere. You bump into the right person at the right time. An unexpected opportunity lands in your lap. These aren't coincidences, they're reflections. Living in the end tunes your inner state so precisely that outer reality has no choice but to harmonize. The world bends to the assumption you carry. Here's another subtle sign. You stop over-explaining yourself. When you're waiting, you often defend your dreams, justify your affirmations, or try to convince others. But when you're embodying, there's nothing to prove. You don't need to announce it because you know it. It's the quiet assurance that speaks louder than words. Your decisions also shift. Instead of reacting out of fear, you begin responding from fulfillment. You choose based on where you already are, not on where you lack. For example, someone embodying abundance doesn't say, "I can't afford it." They say, "That doesn't align with me right now." Same situation, but an entirely different state. Another sign is joy in the present moment. When you're living as if you no longer delay happiness until the manifestation arrives, you allow yourself to enjoy now, because fulfillment is already within. This joy isn't forced, it flows naturally. And that very joy is magnetic, pulling the external into alignment even faster. The people around you notice the difference too. They may say, "You seem calmer," or "Something about you feels different." They can't always pinpoint what changed, but they sense the shift. And often their responses become mirrors, showing you that your inner embodiment is beginning to ripple outward. And perhaps the greatest sign of all, you stop waiting. You're no longer in limbo, hoping, bargaining. You are. That shift changes everything. And once you recognize these signs, the next question naturally arises. How do you hold on to this state consistently, even when the outer hasn't yet caught up? Neville Goddard often emphasized that persistence is the secret ingredient. Anyone can imagine for a night or two, but real transformation comes when you hold the state consistently, even when the outer world seems stubborn. Persistence is what locks in the assumption until reality has no choice but to yield. Think of it like training a muscle. At first, the body resists, it aches, it wants to quit. But with repetition, the muscle strengthens and adapts. The subconscious works the same way. When you persist in the wish fulfilled, you're training it to accept the new reality as normal. Eventually, the outer has to reflect that inner strength. The challenge is that life will often test your assumption. Old patterns reappear, bills still arrive, circumstances still echo the past. In those moments, waiting whispers louder, "See, nothing's changing." But persistence doesn't argue with appearances. Persistence simply returns again and again to the inner conviction. It is done. Neville explained that the outer world is always lagging. It's a delayed mirror. If you understand that, you stop panicking when things don't shift overnight. You realize the outer is just catching up to the inner. And as long as you persist, the delay doesn't matter. It's already yours and reality is aligning in its own time. Here's a personal story. A man once imagined reconciliation with his estranged brother. Weeks passed and nothing changed. He was tempted to give up, but he kept persisting in the imaginal act, hearing his brother's laughter, feeling the embrace. Months later, the call came out of nowhere. Persistence had dissolved the barrier. Persistence doesn't mean straining. And it's not about clenching your jaw or forcing belief. It's more like gently bringing your mind back, again and again, to the fulfilled state. Like guiding a child back to bed when they wander at night, you don't punish, you redirect. That gentle redirection builds unshakable assumption. One mistake people make is treating persistence like waiting. They say, "I've been persisting for 3 weeks. Where is it?" That's not persistence. That's impatience dressed in disguise. True persistence feels calm, steady, anchored. It doesn't demand proof. It knows proof is inevitable. It holds the inner long enough for the outer to catch up. Persistence also changes how you interpret setbacks. Instead of saying, "This delay means it's not working," you begin to see every challenge as a sign of old states dissolving, the storm before the calm. And that perspective strengthens your resolve. You don't collapse. You persist, knowing the law of assumption cannot fail. Think of persistence as holding a radio dial steady. If you keep switching stations, you'll never hear the song. But if you hold the dial long enough, the music comes through clear. Persistence is tuning to the frequency of fulfillment until reality broadcasts it loud and clear. The song is already there. You just have to stay tuned. And this is where the journey deepens. Because once you've learned to persist without strain, you're ready for Neville's final invitation. To stop postponing, stop bargaining, and simply embody the reality now. Not later, not someday, now. At the heart of Neville Goddard's teaching is a simple invitation. Stop waiting, stop pretending, stop postponing, and embody the reality now. Not tomorrow, not after the evidence, not when life proves it to you, right now. Because the only moment you ever truly have is this one, and this one is where creation begins. Embodying the reality now means walking through life with the quiet, knowing that what you desire is already yours. It's not about constant visualization, it's about being. It's the way you sit, the way you breathe, the way you respond to challenges. Every choice whispers, "I already am," and that whisper carries power. Too often people live in a state of almost. Almost abundant, almost loved, almost free, but almost is another word for waiting. Neville's invitation is to drop the almost and step into already. Already abundant, already loved, already free. The shift isn't dramatic. It's subtle, internal, and completely life-altering. Imagine someone waiting for a vacation to feel relaxed. They mark the calendar, count the days, grind through stress. But another person decides, "I choose to feel rested now," and immediately their body responds. That's the power of embodiment. You don't wait for the trip to embody the state. You bring the state into now. Neville often said, "Assumption hardens into fact," but assumption only hardens when it's lived. Reading about it, agreeing with it, even admiring it isn't enough. The law of assumption asks for embodiment. It asks you to rise from your chair, step into the wish fulfilled, and let life mold itself to your decision. And here's the paradox. When you embody now, you stop needing the external proof, and that's precisely when it arrives. Because the world mirrors your state, not your longing. When you no longer chase, the desire chases you. When you no longer beg, the gift arrives. Embodiment flips the entire dynamic of reality. A woman once shared how she longed for partnership, but kept waiting for the one. After discovering Neville, she began embodying love now, taking herself on dates, speaking kindly to herself, moving with the dignity of someone cherished. Months later, she met her partner. But the truth is, the real shift happened the moment she embodied. Embodiment is not about arrogance. It's about alignment. It's not saying, "Look at me, I have it all." It's quietly knowing, "This is who I am now." That knowing doesn't need validation. It radiates. And that radiation draws everything that matches it effortlessly. The end is lived into being. Neville's invitation is radical because it places responsibility back in your hands. No more waiting on fate, timing, or luck. You are the operant power. If imagination creates reality, then your role is clear. Imagine and embody now. Everything else, the signs, the synchronicities, the manifestations, will follow. So here we stand at the closing note. The question is no longer will it happen, but will you live it now? Because the moment you embody, the game changes. And with that, we step into the final stage of this journey, tying everything together in a way that awakens not just knowledge, but transformation. So now the question is no longer whether the law works, it's whether you're willing to live from it. Are you going to keep waiting for proof, or are you going to embody the wish fulfilled right now? Because the moment you shift your state, your entire world begins to shift with it. Ask yourself, how would I think, feel, and move if my desire were already mine? And then dare to live from that answer. That is the essence of Neville Goddard's teaching. Simple but life-altering. Don't wait for life to give you permission. Give yourself permission now. Persist in the end. Let feeling be the bridge, and watch as reality bends to meet your assumption. And if this message stirred something in you, then you already know you're ready for more. So subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep walking with us on this journey into the power of imagination. Because the more you embody, the more you'll see. The secret was never outside, it was always within.